Ernestine Perea was found dead in her bedroom of a single gunshot wound. The gun was by her side. After examining the forensic evidence, her death was ruled a homicide. But could that same evidence be interpreted differently? One man's life hung in the balance. In 1979, Martin Frias entered the United States illegally from Mexico looking for work.
More opportunity to raise your family, better way to, educate your kids, and a better life.
Frias landed a job at a local marble processing plant in the rural town of Wheatland, Wyoming. 2 years later, he met 24-year-old Ernestine Perea, a divorcee with a young daughter. They had 2 children of their own, a boy and a girl.
She was a good dancer. We danced together good. She was somebody you want to be with.
Ernestine and Martin decided to live together and rented a mobile home on the edge of town. But they also fought, mostly over insignificant matters, says Martin. On July 5th, 1984, Ernestine spent the entire day out with her children and didn't arrive home until 10:30 that night. Martin put the children to bed while Ernestine went to sleep in the couple's bedroom. That night, Frias slept on the sofa bed in the living room. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Frias was awakened by one of the children crying.
She was like saying, "Mommy, Mommy, get up." Turned the light on, and that's when I saw she was laying in the rug, right there on the floor. She had the gun next to her.
Ernestine was dead from a gunshot wound.
I see blood in her stomach. When I was walking out with rain, I saw also blood splattered on the wall. So I called for ambulance and called the police.
There was no evidence of a break-in. There was no evidence of anybody else being out at the trailer other than 2 small children, I believe a 4-year-old and a baby.
When questioned at the scene, Frias lied, saying he wasn't home when Ernestine was shot. Frias may have had reason to lie. Police records showed that the sheriff had been called to his home several times for domestic disturbances. On a number of occasions, Ernestine said that Martin had hit her. A forensic analysis revealed that Frias's fingerprints were all over the rifle, and there was more evidence, even more damning. When Ernestine Perea was found dead of a gunshot wound, her common-law husband, Martin Frias, denied he was home when the shooting occurred. But he later changed his story and admitted he was home that night. Investigators discovered that Ernestine was with some male friends earlier on the day she died.
She had been wrestling in the grass. She'd been drinking with these friends. And also that Martin Frias had evidently ridden by the park at that time and very possibly may have seen them.
Frias said Ernestine had come home drunk. Tests proved this correct. Her blood alcohol level was 0.26, 2.5 times the legal limit. He also said they weren't getting along and had stopped sleeping together.
We knew there had been problems between the 2 of them. He was sleeping out on the couch in the living room at that time. He'd been banished from the bedroom.
Although he said he was sleeping down the hall, he claimed he never heard the gun go off.
He told investigators he was sleeping on the couch at the other end of the hallway in the trailer. And at some time during the night, about the time when it's believed that the gun went off, he said he heard what he thought to be a twig breaking at night. And he heard that, and then he went back to sleep.
Frias said Ernestine committed suicide. Next to Ernestine's body was a high-powered .300 Magnum hunting rifle which belonged to Frias. His fingerprints were on the rifle, Ernestine's fingerprint was found on the scope. Her pants were ripped near the zipper, and the button had been pulled off, indicating some sort of struggle. Ernestine had a large wound in her abdomen and a much smaller wound in her back. Since exit wounds are generally larger than entrance wounds, the coroner was certain that Ernestine had been shot in the back.
The bullet had entered through a wound which was a little less than ½ inch in size. It had struck the vertebrae, had gone through the body, and had come out through the abdomen on the front side.
Also supporting the homicide theory was the evidence on Ernestine's blouse.
On the inside of the shirt, there were copious amounts of course, blood and tissue, but I also found bone fragments and lead fragments from the bullet as it was disintegrating, passing through the body.
Proof, Dr. Stone says, that Ernestine was shot from behind. The autopsy results found the same thing.
The results of that autopsy confirmed that the bullet had entered the back and had exited out the front.
And there was no gunshot residue on the front of the blouse, which would have been present had she committed suicide.
They did not find any evidence of that in the front or the back of the blouse. And that indicated that the weapon was at least some 30 inches to 3 feet away, according to their findings.
Frias denied he murdered his wife and pointed to the fact that his right arm was broken and he wasn't able to maneuver the rifle himself. Nevertheless, Ernestine's death was ruled a homicide. Based on the forensic evidence, prosecutors believe that Frias and Ernestine fought when she arrived home. A violent tug from the rear ripped her pants, causing the bruises on her abdomen. As Ernestine was getting up from the floor, prosecutors say Frias shot her in the back. Blood spurted out of her stomach and struck the wall in front of her. As she fell to the floor, her body twisted in reaction to the shot, and she landed on her back. Prosecutors say Frias left the rifle on the ground to make it appear the death was a suicide. They didn't believe Frias' cast would have hindered his ability to fire the weapon.
I feel like the whole world fell on top of me. It was just like a real nightmare. I was saying, gosh, why me? What do I mean? I couldn't. It was shock. I was shocked completely.
Martin Frias was charged with his wife's murder. Since he couldn't afford an attorney, the court appointed one for him. At the time, the State Public Defender's Office used the State Crime Lab, the very same lab used by the prosecution. They had already ruled Ernestine's death was a homicide. Frias's attorney tried to come up with an alternative explanation for Ernestine's death, but he couldn't.
We felt bad about how the trial was going to go. I remember a public defender investigator named Walt Carroll and I talking before the trial started about what a grim prospect it looked like for Martine.
And they were right. The jury convicted Frias of second-degree murder and sentenced him to 25 to 35 years in prison. But the story doesn't end there. After the murder conviction of Martin Frias, his attorney, Robert Moxley, started gathering information to file an appeal. Meanwhile, Moxley started to have misgivings about the competency of the state's pathologist who had performed the autopsy.
The pathologist in this case was not qualified to do forensic cases. And that's probably being charitable.
So he asked Dr. Robert Lance, an independent gunshot residue expert, to test Ernestine's blouse.
I've used a much more sophisticated, much more modern technology called scanning electron microscopy with X-ray emission. And what this does is it provides much better sensitivity for gunshot residue. What this told me was the gunshot residue had come from the front very clearly and had followed the bullet right on through her abdomen and come out the back.
This contradicted tests done by the state crime lab, which found no evidence of gunshot residue anywhere on the blouse.
The tests that had been done by the crime lab were some rather archaic chemical tests where it's possible to do them just a little bit wrong and not find any gunshot residue.
Suddenly, Frias's story that Ernestine had committed suicide didn't seem so far-fetched. Yet, Frias remained behind bars.
My life in prison, it was miserable. I was mad, angry. It was something that I don't wish nobody go to prison for something he didn't done.
After 2 years in prison, Wyoming's Supreme Court granted Frias a new trial. But the defense had their work cut out for them. Prosecutors ordered Ernestine's body exhumed for a second autopsy. The chief medical examiner for Houston, Texas, Dr. Charles Petty, performed this one. The results of the second autopsy were the same as the first. The bullet entered Ernestine's back and came out through her stomach.
I think that the evidence showed at that time, and still does in my mind today, that Martin Frias shot and murdered Ernestine Perea.
But the defense introduced some new evidence in the second trial. That Ernestine was suicidal, and that slash marks on her wrists proved she had tried to kill herself numerous times before.
I was able to document between the different stories and the medical records somewhere between 5 and maybe a dozen prior suicide attempts or suicide gestures.
And Moxley attacked the heart of the prosecution's case. The first point was Frias's contention that he didn't hear the gunshot from the living room. Acoustics expert Dr. Harry Holleen provided an explanation. Holleen conducted a test using the body of a dead horse covered with a fabric similar to Ernestine's blouse, with a .300 Magnum rifle, similar to Frias's rifle. The first shot, 3 feet away from the horse, was very loud.
When the gun was fired in the open, we got dB readings of somewhere between 110 and 120 dB, and it sounded like gunfire.
But when the muzzle was placed against the skin and material, it sounded very different.
The gunshot doesn't sound like gunfire. It sounds like someone kicking the side of a building or kicking a piece of furniture, and the energy level is quite low.
The sound was similar to what Frias described on the night of his wife's death. Judy Bunker, a blood spatter expert, analyzed the blood evidence on the wall, only 18 inches from the floor. She says it clearly shows Ernestine was sitting on the floor with the rifle to her stomach when the shot was fired.
The bullet fragments in the wall, their location, along with the blood spatter location across the wall, and given the location of her wounds, would indicate that she was either kneeling or seated when the shot was fired.
And she found no blood spatter evidence to suggest, as prosecutors contended, that Ernestine was shot in the back, then twisted in the air while falling to the floor.
I learned from Judith Bunker that if somebody gets shot and spins around, that, they spew vital fluids around.
But there was no blood spatter on the floor walls, or the bed from the twisting motion the prosecution says occurred. The defense theory was clearly suicide. That Ernestine held the muzzle of the rifle to her stomach with one hand, then leaned over and pushed the trigger with the other. But prosecution experts said there was a problem with that theory.
Had this weapon been used in contact with the body at the time of discharge, that I would have expected that there would have been blood and or tissue on the muzzle of the weapon, and there was none.
Dr. Vincent DeMaio, an expert in high-velocity gunshot wounds, testified for the defense.
The absence of blood on the weapon means absolutely nothing. Maybe half the times with handguns, you don't find blood on the muzzle. It's a little more common in shotguns, we'll say. But don't forget, with rifles, and in this situation, you had clothing in between.
Dr. DeMaio also believes that the autopsy photos clearly show that Ernestine was shot in the stomach.
When you discharge a gun, out the muzzle of the gun comes a flame. That's about 14 to 1500 degrees. And out comes gas, and out comes soot, carbon, from burning gunpowder. If you put the muzzle of the gun against the body, then you're going to have this soot, and the flame burns, and then the effects of gas. If you look at the wound in the abdomen, there's soot and there's flame burns. That means the muzzle was in contact with the body at the time of discharge. Therefore, this has to be the entrance.
And Dr. DeMaio says the gas discharge from the rifle temporarily inflated Ernestine's abdomen with enough force that it ripped her jeans, contrary to the prosecution's claim that they were torn during a fight. Lastly, prosecution experts testified, as they did in the first trial, that they found no gunshot residue on the blouse, supporting their claim that Ernestine was at least 3 feet away when the gun was fired. The defense presented their new scanning electron microscope evidence of gunpowder residue on the blouse. And with that, the defense rested their case. In a moment, the verdict. In Martin Frias's second murder trial, there were 2 very different theories presented to the jury. The prosecution theory was that Martin Frias shot Ernestine in the back as she was getting up from the floor after a fight. After the shot, Ernestine twisted as she fell to the floor, which explains why she was found on her back. The defense maintained that Ernestine was sitting on the floor. The rifle was upside down. She used one hand to hold the muzzle against her stomach and the other to push the trigger. During deliberations, the jury wanted to see if a woman Ernestine's size could accomplish what the defense said happened.
And there was a small woman on the second jury. They took the gun into the jury room, and she sat down on the floor and replicated my theory. And she told me later that her finger had touched that scope on that rifle exactly where Ernestine's fingerprint had been, same alignment.
After 2.5 hours, the jury had a verdict: not guilty.
I don't question the wisdom of the jury. I can see where they may not have been sure who had the accurate opinion, who had the accurate theory. And there's no question in the criminal justice system, as it should be, that if there's a tie or even anything close to a tie, that You know, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think the jury didn't acquit Martin Frias because they felt he was innocent, but I believe that they acquitted him because, you know, they could not find that he was guilty beyond any reasonable doubt.
I was so happy that I kind of feel like cry at the same time.
We hugged each other and danced around the courtroom a little bit. It was a good moment.
Martin Frias now lives in Southern California. He is now an American citizen and has tried to get custody of his children, but they remain with Ernestine's mother in Wyoming.
I'm married, I got a good job. I can't complain, I make good money. Got a little girl. You know, we enjoy life.
The forensic experts who assisted Robert Moxley in the second trial did so without remuneration.
The forensic community rallied around me in this case to make sure that I got the help I needed, to find the expertise I needed, and there were just all kinds of people out there committed to making sure that justice got done in this case.
American justice, it does work. It's better than our time.
Madeleine Murray O'Hair was America's best-known atheist, principally responsible for abolishing prayer in public schools.
Madeleine, you either liked her or you hated her.
In 1995, Madeleine Murray O'Hair mysteriously disappeared from her Texas home along with her son John Murray and granddaughter Robin. Over $600,000 of their organization's money disappeared along with them.
What is it not to love about this story? It involves greed, it involves gold, it involves the most hated woman in America. This is a sexy story, and we should tell it.
It was a local newspaper reporter playing forensic detective who helped solve the case. Madeleine Murray O'Hair was often called the most hated woman in America.
Mr. Withers, is this a form of harassment? If it is, I will leave.
I am creating the record.
No, you're not creating the record. You are wasting my time.
These are...
When you're done reading that, call me. I'll be in the ladies' room.
Is it your understanding then that you have brought no documents today?
Call me in the ladies' room when you are done.
She was an avowed atheist who achieved fame in 1963 by opposing prayer in public schools. She took her case all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won. She founded the non-profit group The American Atheists, as well as a magazine preaching the gospel of strict separation of church and state. She also wrote articles for Larry Flint's Hustler magazine and was the subject of a Playboy magazine interview. Madeleine O'Hair was a difficult woman to work with and was notorious for speaking her mind.
All right then, don't with me.
I have never encountered a more bitter, more distasteful person than Madeleine Murray O'Hair.
Don't touch me.
She was extremely foul-mouthed to the point that even though we were doing an interview about something that she wanted us to do a story on, we had to stop the interview in the middle because she was cursing so much.
Here, you have a limited opportunity this morning to ask me questions. Why don't you get to the question?
In August of 1995, 77-year-old Madeleine, her 40-year-old son John, and 30-year-old granddaughter Robin left Austin, Texas, without saying a word to anyone. The staff of the American Atheist Organization found a note on their office door saying the O'Hairs had been called away for an emergency and didn't know when they would return. John's Mercedes-Benz and Robin's Porsche were gone too. But they left their passports behind, as well as Madeleine's diabetes medicine and her 3 dogs.
Madeleine may not have cared very much for people, but she sure loved those dogs, we were told.
Couldn't get in touch with them, and I got concerned, so I started making phone calls, and then I called John's cell phone, and that's when Madeleine answered.
But Madeleine wouldn't tell board member Ellen Johnson where she was. Johnson said the calls were short and strained, and she worried that Madeleine and her son were under some sort of duress.
I questioned him about what was going on, and he tried to reassure me that everything was okay, and I believed it.
Just 1 month later, Madeleine and John stopped answering their cell phone calls. When Ellen Johnson took over the American Atheist Group in Madeleine's absence, she discovered that since the O'Hares disappeared, more than $600,000 was missing from the organization's bank account.
Suddenly, you have three people and a very large amount of money all disappearing at the same time, and this makes it far more interesting.
John McCormick covered the disappearance for the Express News in San Antonio, Texas.
Among the atheists, there was a very peculiar silence, but beneath it was a very profound concern. They were very concerned. They didn't know what to do. They hadn't really attempted to get any help from law enforcement.
No one associated with the American Atheists reported the three missing, and it wasn't until a year later that Bill Murray, Madeleine's estranged son, filed a missing persons report with Austin police. Madeleine and Bill had a rocky relationship. In 1980, on Mother's Day, Bill told Madeleine that he had embraced Christianity and was no longer an atheist. He then went public, writing a book and making a film attacking his mother's beliefs.
My mother loved confrontations, and she never hesitated to use me as an accomplice in her schemes. She wanted to push the school prayer issue as far as she could, so she instructed me to keep a record of prayer and Bible reading at school. It was here in my home my mother made me a spy for the cause of atheism.
Madeleine immediately disowned him, and Bill never again spoke with his mother, his brother John, or his daughter Robin. Bill didn't know if his family's disappearance was foul play or if they had stolen the atheists' money and fled. A year after Madeleine Murray O'Hare disappeared with her son John Murray and granddaughter Robin, journalist John McCormick learned what the American Atheist Group already knew, that John Murray had withdrawn over $600,000 from the atheist bank account just weeks after the three disappeared. McCormick also examined John's cell phone records, which indicated he had been living in San Antonio, Texas, after his disappearance. Many of the 200 calls were suspicious.
They've been calling financial institutions, they've been calling airlines, they've been calling drugstores to get Madeleine's prescriptions. There were more than 150 calls. They called jewelry stores.
One of those jewelry stores was on Frederickson Road in San Antonio. The owner said that John Murray purchased $600,000 worth of gold coins using cash. Even after Madeleine's son, Bill Murray, reported the three missing, the Austin police showed little interest.
There was no investigation by the Austin Police Department. It was a total joke.
The police reaction may have been based on their belief that Madeleine and her family absconded with the atheist money and that it was an internal matter.
How can somebody that's that famous turn up missing with all that money and still no one wants to look for her? So I decided I'd be part of the team that went looking.
Television news reporter Valerie Williams discovered that John Murray sold his Mercedes-Benz for $15,000, well below the car's value, to this man, Mark Sparrow.
John Murray?
The seller identified himself as John Murray.
Sure, no problem. Low miles.
Yeah, it's 20,000, is that about right?
Yeah.
But when shown a picture of John Murray, Sparrow said it wasn't the man who sold him the car.
He said his name was John Murray, and that's not the guy who sold me the car.
Would you mind taking a look at these mugshots for me?
After reviewing mugshot pictures, Mr. Sparrow identified the impersonator as another missing person, an ex-convict named Danny Fry. This was an interesting coincidence. Waters saw the article. Friends say he vowed revenge. Journalist John McCormick called Waters and asked him if he had anything to do with Madeline's disappearance.
You're not, you got anything at all to do with this? I have no.
I didn't believe a word he said, but he spoke as though, it was the truth.
McCormick discovered that David Waters, Danny Fry, and another ex-convict, Gary Carr, were all working together in Austin, Texas around the time the O'Hares disappeared in August of 1995. And not long afterwards, a headless, handless male torso was discovered in a Dallas river.
They'd spent 3 years trying to figure out who it was, but they had no fingerprints, no dental, and they had no missing persons records that matched this disappearance, so they were totally stumped.
McCormick had a hunch that this body was somehow connected to the O'Hares' disappearance. Not long after the O'Hares disappeared, a male torso was found in a Dallas river. Without a head or hands, fingerprints and dental records couldn't be used for identification. Forensic anthropologists estimated the man to be between the ages of 35 and 45. He had a stocky build and a lot of chest hair. The description didn't fit Madeline's son, John. But journalist John McCormick had a hunch. He told police that it might be Danny Fry, the man who had impersonated John Murray when selling his car. Scientists took DNA from Danny Fry's brother and compared it to the blood DNA of the torso. It was a match. Just as McCormick suspected, the dead man in the river was Danny Fry.
The blockbuster was when we could write a story that said that the headless corpse in Dallas was Danny Fry, and by the way, he was last seen with David Waters in Austin, and by the way, he spent his last month in San Antonio at the same time the O'Hares did, so that really kicked in the door.
Suddenly, local, state, and federal law enforcement officials took notice and joined the investigation. When David Waters' ex-girlfriend, Patty Steffen, read about Danny Fry's murder in the newspaper, she immediately called the FBI.
At first, she wanted to tell us small bits and pieces. You have to understand, this was a woman who was terrified.
She gave investigators an important lead. 3 years earlier, she said that David Waters had rented a storage unit around the time the O'Hares disappeared, and that Waters had once gone there with this spray canister. Laboratory tests on the canister revealed it had once contained bleach, which is sometimes used to remove blood evidence. Armed with a search warrant, police found a tiny red stain beneath a piece of aluminum under the wall. It was so small, it was almost invisible. With blood from Madeline's son Bill for comparison, a mitochondrial DNA test revealed the stain was a mixture of two people, Madeline Murray O'Hare and her son John Murray. Next, the FBI searched Waters' apartment.
We found documents that belonged to the O'Hares that were dated after David Waters had been fired from their organization.
Mr. Waters, himself a prior convicted felon who was not allowed to have guns or ammunition,
3 adult bodies were uncovered. In each case,
the neck of the individual. There were some remnants of clothes that were found, but no clothes that were intact.
There had been some effort to burn the remains, not to the point of cremation, but in order to destroy maybe the clothing or any other, DNA evidence that might be there.
as the remains were unearthed, shining in the afternoon sun, was the metal plate of an artificial hip. Medical records revealed that Madeleine O'Hare had undergone hip replacement surgery several years before her disappearance. The serial number of the hip in Madeleine's medical file matched the number on the hip in the grave. Forensic odontologists compared the O'Hares' dental records to the skulls in the grave and confirmed that these were the remains of Madeleine, her son John, and granddaughter Robin.
For John Murray, when he was in the grave and uncovered, he did have a plastic bag over his skull. And when the plastic bag was removed, there were small fractures that occurred to the skull itself, indicating some blunt trauma had been done to him during the time of his death.
The cause of death for Madeleine and Robin couldn't be determined by looking at the bones. But since their heads were covered in plastic, it was assumed they were asphyxiated. But investigators found something else: an extra head and 2 extra hands. The head showed a single gunshot wound at the base of the skull. Forensic scientists used a photo superimposition technique for identification. They suspected the skull was that of Danny Fry, the man whose torso was found in the Dalles River. Scientists took a photograph of Danny Fry, then photographed the skull at the same angle and size. The 2 photographs were superimposed to see if the facial features matched the skull.
For example, the distance between the eyes and the shape of the nose, and the distance between the nose to the teeth, and the distance across the cheeks. And every area that I examined in the video superimposition matched up.
The motive for the O'Hares' murder had been revenge. But why had Danny Fry been murdered? The forensic evidence found years after the O'Hares' disappearance tied David Waters and his 2 associates, Danny Fry and Gary Carr, to their murders. David Waters' girlfriend, Patty Steffens, told police that Waters kidnapped the O'Hares because of the unflattering and inflammatory article Madeleine had written about him.
His girlfriend said he fantasized about torturing her, cutting off her toes. And so basically, I think this whole thing came down to not just money, but really ugly personal chemistry between 2 dysfunctional personalities.
For David Waters, it was about revenge. He wanted the ultimate revenge on Madeleine O'Hare, and the money was just a byproduct.
After kidnapping the O'Hares, Waters forced John Murray to withdraw $600,000 from the Atheist bank account and then took him to the jewelry store to exchange the $600,000 for gold coins. The O'Hares were most likely dead by the time Danny Fry impersonated John Murray to sell his car. But why was Danny Fry killed too? The answer was his drinking.
We knew that Danny Fry drank, and loose lips sink ships. And by what David had told Bob Fry about his brother, and that was, your brother has a big mouth, could be the thing that caused his death.
But David Waters made several crucial mistakes. Although Waters cleaned the room with water and bleach, scientists still found a tiny speck of blood 3 years later. identified by mitochondrial DNA as that of John Murray and Madeleine O'Hair. But removing Danny Fry's head and hands still didn't prevent identification. DNA and skull photo superimposition were all scientists needed. Ironically, after stealing the $600,000 from the O'Hairs, Waters never got the opportunity to enjoy the money. It was stolen from him.
Well, his first mistake was putting his money in a storage locker up in Austin and having three bozos from San Antonio who were looking for used TVs open up the locker with a master key and find a suitcase with $500,000 in gold.
This is not safe. Stand back.
For his role in this case, David Waters was sentenced to 80 years in prison. His accomplice, Gary Carr, was sentenced to life in prison.
Mr. Carr fully admitted his role in involvement with David Waters in the abduction, robbery, and murder of the O'Hairs. And he indicated that he had assisted in dismembering the bodies and putting the body parts in 55-gallon drums in a storage unit here in Austin.
It was a nice, neat ending. They found the bodies, the bad guy goes to prison, and, you know, the hero's right off into the sunset.
For his persistence, John McCormick is one of the heroes of this case. And forensic science played an important role, too.
Well, I mean, this was definitely one that, if it wasn't for DNA, we'd probably still be scratching our heads as to who this person was.
A lot of times I kind of forget about the case when the next case comes in, and so I really don't have one that always jumps to mind, but I'll remember this one for a long time.
The rain had washed away nearly everything. Footprints disappeared first. Tire tracks dissolved into thick Louisiana mud before sunrise. Blood mixed with rainwater and vanished into the drainage ditch beside a lonely stretch of Highway 14. By morning, the crime scene looked almost peaceful, as if the earth itself had decided to keep a secret. But secrets never stay buried forever. 38 years later, a single strand of forgotten DNA would drag that night back into the light and force an entire town to relive the nightmare it had spent decades trying to forget. Everything began on the evening of October 18th, 1986. The town of Belhaven was the kind of place where everyone recognized every pickup truck that rolled through Main Street. The grocery store closed before sunset. The sheriff knew nearly every resident by first name. Doors were rarely locked. Parents expected their children home before dark, but nobody panicked if they arrived a few minutes late. 24-year-old Sarah Mitchell had lived there all her life. She worked as a librarian at the small parish library, spending quiet afternoons, shelving books, and helping local children with school assignments. Friends described her as dependable, organized, the kind of person who remembered birthdays without writing them down. She smiled easily but trusted carefully. She had recently become engaged and was planning a spring wedding. She had no known enemies, no dangerous relationships, no criminal connections. She should have become another ordinary resident, living an ordinary life. Instead, she became Belhaven's darkest memory. That Saturday evening, Sarah finished locking the library shortly after 6:20 p.m. A co-worker watched her place several books into the passenger seat of her blue 1982 Chevrolet Cavalier before waving goodbye. It was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. The drive home should have taken less than 15 minutes. She never arrived. At first, nobody worried. Her fiancé, Michael Turner, assumed she had stopped to visit her parents. Her parents believed she had gone to meet Michael. By 9 p.m., uncertainty became concern. By 10:30 p.m., concern turned into panic. The sheriff's office received the missing person call at 10:47 p.m. Deputies began driving every road between the library and Sarah's home. No vehicle, no accident, no broken-down car, nothing. Volunteers joined the search before sunrise. Hunters rode horseback through nearby woods. Church groups searched abandoned barns. Boats moved slowly through marshland illuminated by powerful spotlights. The town refused to believe someone could simply disappear. Then, at 8:13 Sunday morning, a farmer discovered Sarah's Chevrolet. It sat abandoned beside Highway 14, approximately 6 miles from town. The driver's door remained closed. The keys were gone. One headlight was still on despite the drained battery. There were no obvious signs of a struggle. Inside the car lay Sarah's purse, her wallet, her engagement ring box. Everything appeared untouched. Everything except Sarah herself. She had vanished. Deputies immediately secured the area. Crime scene technicians arrived from Lake Charles. Photographs documented every inch of the vehicle. Fingerprints were lifted from the steering wheel, dashboard, and door handles. Most belonged to Sarah. Several partial prints remained too smudged for identification. In 1986, that was the end of the science. No DNA testing. No advanced genetic profiling. No digital enhancement. Only fingerprints, fibers, and hope. Hope disappeared 3 days later. Search dogs tracked Sarah's scent toward an isolated drainage canal nearly 2 miles from where her car had been found. Hidden beneath thick reeds and partially submerged in shallow water, search teams made the discovery everyone feared. Sarah Mitchell was dead. The silence that settled over Belhaven that afternoon never truly lifted again. The medical examiner confirmed homicide. Time of death was estimated between 7 o'clock and 9 p.m. on the night she disappeared. The attack had been sudden, violent, personal, yet the surrounding area revealed almost nothing. Heavy rain had erased footwear impressions. Vehicle tracks had become indistinguishable. Any biological evidence exposed to the weather had degraded beyond recognition. Investigators collected everything they could. Fragments of vegetation, loose fibers, hair recovered from Sarah's jacket, a broken wristwatch lying several feet away, several cigarette butts discovered near the roadside. Every item entered evidence storage. Every item labeled carefully. Every item waiting for technology that did not yet exist. Belhaven watched in disbelief as weeks became months. The investigation expanded across Louisiana. More than 400 interviews were conducted. Family members, friends, co-workers, former classmates, travelers passing through the area, truck drivers, hunters. No lead survived careful examination. Anonymous tips flooded the sheriff's office. Most proved worthless. Some were deliberate hoaxes. One caller claimed to have witnessed a blue pickup truck following Sarah that evening. Another insisted she had secretly planned to leave town. Neither story matched the evidence. As Christmas approached, decorations appeared along Main Street. Store windows displayed lights. Children gathered for holiday concerts. But one chair remained empty at every Mitchell family dinner. One unopened wedding invitation sat forever inside Michael Turner's dresser drawer. Belhaven celebrated nothing that year. The case dominated local newspapers. Louisiana librarian slain. Killer still at large. Community lives in fear. Months became years. Witnesses moved away. Memories faded. Evidence boxes filled storage shelves inside the parish sheriff's office. New detectives inherited old files. Fresh theories replaced forgotten ones. One investigator believed a traveling offender committed the murder before leaving the state forever. Another suspected someone Sarah knew personally. Neither theory could be proven. The investigation slowly lost momentum. By the early 1990s, Sarah Mitchell's murder carried a new label written in black marker across the evidence box. Cold case. The words felt permanent. Generation after generation grew up hearing the story. Parents warned teenagers never to drive alone after dark. Children pointed toward Highway 14 whenever conversations turned to ghost stories. Older residents still remembered the flashing police lights reflecting off rain-soaked pavement. Nobody forgot the date. October 18th. Every year, flowers appeared beside the drainage canal. Nobody admitted leaving them there. Nobody needed to ask. Time continued moving forward. Technology transformed criminal investigations across America. DNA profiling solved murders once believed impossible. Fingerprint databases became computerized. Digital forensics revolutionized evidence analysis. Cases older than Sarah's suddenly collapsed beneath the weight of modern science. Yet Belhaven's tragedy remained untouched. The original biological evidence had been considered too damaged, too contaminated, too old. At least, that was what everyone believed. Then, during the spring of 2024, the Louisiana State Police launched a statewide initiative to re-examine unsolved homicides using advanced forensic methods unavailable decades earlier. Hundreds of forgotten evidence boxes were removed from storage. Sarah Mitchell's case was among them. Forensic analyst Emily Carter carefully opened the aging container. The cardboard smelled of dust and time. Inside rested dozens of sealed envelopes, photographs fading toward yellow, handwritten witness statements, fiber samples, hair evidence, clothing preserved for nearly 4 decades. Then she noticed something almost overlooked. A small paper envelope tucked beneath the victim's jacket. Its evidence label read only 6 words. Fingernail scrapings, October 1986. Collected, stored, never tested, because in 1986, there had been nothing capable of testing them. Emily stared at the envelope for several seconds. Then she carefully placed it into a modern forensic evidence tray. Nobody inside the laboratory realized it yet, but hidden beneath microscopic fragments trapped beneath Sarah Mitchell's fingernails for 38 years. The killer had unknowingly left behind a signature that time could not erase. And before another month had passed, that forgotten trace of DNA would awaken a case everyone believed was buried forever. The evidence envelope had remained sealed for 38 years. Its edges had yellowed. The ink on the handwritten label had faded until only faint blue strokes remained. Every detective who had inherited Sarah Mitchell's case had seen it. None had been able to use it. In 1986, fingernail scrapings represented little more than a precaution. Investigators collected them because protocol demanded it, not because science could reveal much from them. Now, everything was different. Inside Louisiana State Police Crime Laboratory, forensic analyst Emily Carter opened the envelope under sterile conditions. Every movement was recorded. Every instrument had been sterilized. No room for contamination. No second chance. The tiny fragments collected beneath Sarah's fingernails were almost invisible. Bits of skin, microscopic fibers, dirt, material that most people would mistake for ordinary dust. Emily separated each particle beneath a high-powered microscope. The extraction process lasted nearly 14 hours. Nobody expected much. After nearly 4 decades, biological material often degraded beyond recovery. Yet modern forensic chemistry had rewritten those assumptions many times before. The sequencing machine began processing shortly after midnight. By sunrise, the first results appeared on the monitor. Emily stared silently. One profile belonged to Sarah. Expected. Another profile. Male. Partial. But remarkably well preserved. She checked the controls again. Ran the sample a second time. The result didn't change. Someone else's DNA had survived beneath Sarah Mitchell's fingernails for 38 years. The laboratory supervisor entered the room carrying coffee. Emily simply turned the monitor toward him. He needed only a few seconds. Call cold case. Detective Nathan Brooks had spent nearly 12 years investigating unsolved homicides. He had learned never to celebrate too early. DNA created opportunities, not miracles. A partial profile still required someone to match it. Without a suspect, it remained another unanswered question. The profile entered Cody's that afternoon. Thousands of law enforcement agencies across America shared access to the national DNA database. The search began automatically. Hours passed. No match. Nathan wasn't surprised. Many offenders had never been arrested for crimes requiring DNA collection. The killer could have lived quietly for decades, started a family, changed states, even died. Still, the evidence existed now. That alone changed everything. Nathan reopened every interview conducted in 1986. More than 400 statements, boxes filled with yellowing paper. Most described ordinary observations. Who Sarah spoke with, where she had been seen, what she wore. Then one interview stopped him. Witness number 143. Gas station attendant. Statement taken October 20th, 1986. Victim arrived approximately 6:35 p.m. Purchased gasoline and a bottle of water. Nathan continued reading. Blue pickup truck parked beside victim's vehicle. He frowned. That detail had received little attention in the original investigation. The witness couldn't identify the driver, couldn't provide a license plate. Only one sentence stood out. Driver appeared to know victim. They spoke briefly before leaving. Nathan highlighted the paragraph. If Sarah willingly spoke to someone she recognized. The investigation looked very different. The gas station itself still stood outside Belhaven. Different owners. New pumps. Fresh paint. Nathan visited anyway. The current owner laughed when asked about 1986. I was still in high school. But he knew someone who might help. His father, Arthur Guidry, 78 years old, retired, still living behind the station. Arthur welcomed detectives inside without hesitation. The librarian? He nodded before Nathan finished speaking. I remember her. What do you remember? Arthur looked through the kitchen window. She smiled. Nathan waited. At who? The man in the pickup. You saw them talking? Arthur nodded slowly. It looked friendly. Did you recognize him? Arthur remained silent for several seconds. I thought I did. Nathan leaned forward. Who? Atsuasite. I wasn't sure then. What about now? I think. It was Deputy Carl Landry. The room fell completely silent. Nathan didn't respond immediately. Deputy Carl Landry, one of the officers assigned to Sarah Mitchell's original murder investigation. Personnel records confirmed Landry had worked for the Belhaven Sheriff's Office in 1986. He helped secure the crime scene, interviewed witnesses, handled evidence transport. He retired in 2001, died in 2015. Nathan studied the file carefully. No complaints, no disciplinary actions. Respected by everyone. The possibility seemed almost impossible. Yet impossible cases often survived because investigators refused to question familiar faces. Nathan requested every report Landry had written during the investigation. Something unusual appeared almost immediately. His notes concerning the gas station interview differed slightly from the witness's original statement. Arthur Guidry had written, victim appeared familiar with pickup driver. Landry summarized it differently. Witness, unable to identify pickup driver. One sentence disappeared. Why? Simple oversight or deliberate omission? Meanwhile, forensic scientists continued examining Sarah's preserved clothing. Modern alternate light sources revealed biological traces invisible in 1986. Most proved 2-degraded. Then technicians located several skin cells trapped beneath a torn section of Sarah's jacket sleeve. Another DNA profile emerged. Male. Partial. Nathan compared both laboratory reports. The genetic markers matched. The same unknown man had left DNA beneath Sarah's fingernails. And on her jacket, this was no accidental transfer. This person had fought with her. The investigation received another unexpected break. Genealogical DNA. Because the unknown profile failed to match Cody's, prosecutors authorized investigative genetic genealogy. The profile entered a secure genealogy database used for violent crime investigations. The process didn't search for the suspect. It searched for relatives. Days passed. Nothing. Then, a notification appeared. Third cousin. Louisiana. Shared ancestral line traced to Acadia Parish. Nathan smiled for the first time in weeks. The DNA finally had somewhere to begin. Not a name. Not yet. Just a family tree. Sometimes. That was enough. The family tree began with a single name. Etienne Boudreau. Born in southern Louisiana in 1894. A rice farmer. Father of 7 children. By itself, the information meant almost nothing. But every generation that followed spread across neighboring parishes, producing hundreds of descendants over the next century. Some remained in Belhaven. Others moved to Texas. A few settled in Arkansas and Mississippi. Investigative genetic genealogy didn't identify a suspect. It identified possibilities. Nathan Brooks and forensic genealogist Dr. Melissa Vaughn spent 3 days mapping the extended family. Marriage licenses, birth certificates, military records, obituaries, census reports. By the end of the week, the wall inside the task force room was covered with photographs connected by colored strings. More than 100 living descendants. Too many. The challenge was eliminating them one by one. The first filter was geography. Who had lived within 50 miles of Belhaven in October 1986. The list dropped from 112 names to 27. The second filter examined age. The unknown male profile most likely belonged to someone between 20 and 40 years old in 1986. That removed another 14 people. 13 remained. Nathan wrote each name onto the whiteboard. Farmers, mechanics, oil refinery workers, a truck driver, a deputy sheriff, a volunteer firefighter. Ordinary lives, ordinary histories. Some had criminal records. Most did not. Any one of them could have walked past Sarah Mitchell without attracting a second glance. Investigators quietly began reviewing each person's background. No search warrants. No public announcements. The task force wanted facts before accusations. One by one, the names disappeared. 2 men had been deployed overseas with the military during October 1986. 3 had hospital records, proving they were recovering from serious injuries. Another had lived in Texas for nearly 2 years before the murder. 7 remained. Nathan noticed one unusual connection. 3 of those 7 men regularly hunted together in the mid-1980s. Among them was Deputy Carl Landry's younger brother, Thomas Landry. Unlike Carl, Thomas had never worked in law enforcement. He owned a small auto repair garage just outside Belhaven. Business records showed Sarah Mitchell had taken her Chevrolet there several weeks before she disappeared. Nathan stared at the invoice. October 2nd, 1986. Brake inspection. Oil change. No repairs recommended. He slowly leaned back in his chair. Thomas Landry knew Sarah. Sarah knew Thomas. That fact had never appeared anywhere in the original investigation. Nathan drove to the abandoned garage the following morning. The business had closed nearly 15 years earlier. Rust covered the service bays. Tall weeds pushed through cracked concrete. An elderly man sweeping the neighboring property recognized the building immediately. Tom's old place. You knew him. Everybody did. What kind of man was he? The neighbor shrugged. Quiet. Helpful. Kept to himself. Nathan showed him a photograph of Sarah Mitchell. Recognition came instantly. She came here. Often. Couple of times. What for? Car trouble. Nathan asked carefully. Did they seem close? The old man hesitated. I wouldn't say close. But Tom liked talking to her. Nathan noticed the hesitation. You don't sound convinced. The man lowered his broom. My wife always thought he liked her more than she liked him. Back at headquarters, investigators reopened Thomas Landry's financial records. Nothing unusual appeared at first. Mortgage payments, utility bills, business expenses. Then forensic accountant Lisa Moreno found something unexpected. On October 21st, 1986, 3 days after Sarah disappeared, Thomas purchased new seat covers for his pickup truck. Cash payment. No explanation. Nathan frowned. Seat covers alone proved nothing. People replaced worn interiors all the time. Still, the timing bothered him. Meanwhile, the laboratory completed additional testing on fibers recovered beneath Sarah's fingernails. Blue acrylic, industrial grade, commonly used in automotive upholstery during the mid-1980s. Nathan immediately compared the laboratory report with photographs of Thomas Landry's truck. Blue bench seat, factory original, exactly the same material. Not unique enough for identification, but no longer a coincidence. The task force interviewed Thomas's former employees. Most remembered little. Nearly 4 decades had passed. Then one mechanic, 72-year-old Raymond Ellis, mentioned something investigators had never heard before. Tom closed early that Saturday. Nathan looked up. What time? Around 6. Did he say why? Raymond scratched his chin. He said he had somewhere to be. Did he mention where? No. What vehicle did he leave in? The blue Ford pickup. Nathan felt the room grow quiet. Sarah left the library shortly after 6:20 p.m. The gas station attendant reported a blue pickup beside her car around 6:35. Thomas closed his garage around 6. The timeline was beginning to align. Detectives located Thomas Landry's surviving family. His widow agreed to speak voluntarily. She appeared genuinely surprised when investigators reopened the case. I thought all of this ended years ago. Nathan asked gently. Did your husband know Sarah Mitchell? Everyone knew Sarah. Were they friends? She looked away. I don't think so. Nathan noticed the pause. What aren't you telling me? She sighed deeply. There were rumors. What kind of rumors? That Tom asked her out. And she said no. When? I don't remember. But before she got engaged. Nathan wrote carefully. Rejected affection. Possible motive. Still, nothing close to proof. Late that evening, Emily Carter walked into Nathan's office carrying another laboratory report. You need to see this. Nathan read the first page. His expression changed immediately. The unknown DNA profile recovered beneath Sarah's fingernails contained enough additional markers for another genealogy comparison. The updated analysis dramatically narrowed the family tree. Instead of 100 descendants, only 3 men now fit every genetic probability. Thomas Landry, his first cousin, Harold Boudreau, and one name Nathan had never encountered before, Richard Gaspard, 48 years old today, former long-haul truck driver, resident of Baton Rouge, no criminal record, no obvious connection to Sarah Mitchell. Nathan stared at the 3 photographs lined across his desk. Somewhere among those faces, the killer had been hiding for 38 years. And for the first time since the investigation began, the list was short enough to start watching every move they made. 3 names. 38 years of uncertainty had been reduced to 3 ordinary faces. Thomas Landry, Harold Boudreau, Richard Gaspard. One of them had inherited the same DNA profile found beneath Sarah Mitchell's fingernails. One of them, or a close biological relative, had been within arm's reach of her on the night she died. Nathan Brooks refused to rush. Cold cases had survived this long because investigators forced conclusions before the evidence was ready. This time would be different. Every fact had to stand on its own. Every assumption had to be tested. The task force divided into 3 teams. One reviewed Thomas Landry's life. Another reconstructed Harold Boudreau's movements during October 1986. The third followed Richard Gaspard's history from the day he left Belhaven until the present. The first surprise came from Richard. For decades he insisted he had never been anywhere near Belhaven after high school. Employment records proved otherwise. Archived delivery manifests from a regional freight company showed Richard completed regular cargo routes through Belhaven during the fall of 1986. One delivery occurred on October 18th, the exact day Sarah Mitchell disappeared. Nathan circled the date. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidences had begun piling up. Harold Boudreau's timeline looked cleaner. He worked as a mechanic at a rice processing plant. Payroll records showed he clocked out at 5:42 p.m. Several co-workers claimed they shared drinks with him until nearly 8 o'clock that evening. Nathan knew memory could be unreliable after nearly 40 years. Still, investigators located an old restaurant receipt preserved inside company accounting records. 6 employees, 6 dinners. October 18th. Harold's signature appeared on the credit slip. The timestamp read 7:26 p.m. It wasn't perfect, but it placed him miles away during the estimated time of Sarah's murder. Nathan erased Harold's name from the suspect board. 2 remained. Meanwhile, Thomas Landry's story became increasingly complicated. His garage appointment book, recovered from an old storage unit years after his death, listed dozens of customers during October 1986. Most entries included vehicle descriptions. One line stood out. October 2nd. Sarah M., Blue Cavalier. Beside the appointment, someone had written a single letter. No explanation. No meaning. Just one letter. Nathan asked former employees whether they recognized it. Nobody did. Emily Carter continued re-examining physical evidence using technology unavailable in the 1980s. The cigarette butts recovered near Highway 14 had long been dismissed. Rain exposure supposedly destroyed any forensic value. Modern extraction methods proved otherwise. One filter yielded degraded saliva, enough for limited DNA analysis. Everyone gathered inside the laboratory. The sequence finished just before midnight. Emily compared the results against the unknown profile recovered beneath Sarah's fingernails. Not a match. Nathan felt disappointment settle across the room. Then Emily looked closer. The contributor was female, likely unrelated. The cigarette probably belonged to a volunteer or passerby before the crime. Another dead end. The following week brought an unexpected witness. Margaret Ellis, now 83, contacted investigators after seeing a television report about the reopened case. She insisted she remembered something she never reported in 1986. Nathan drove to her farmhouse the same afternoon. Margaret unfolded an old road map across her kitchen table. She pointed toward a narrow gravel road connecting Highway 14 to an abandoned boat launch. I was driving here. What time? A little after 7. What did you see? A blue pickup. Nathan's pulse quickened. Anything unusual? It wasn't parked. It was blocking the road. Could you see who was inside? She shook her head. No. But someone outside the truck waved for me to keep driving. Nathan asked quietly, "Man or woman?" "A man." "What did he look like?" "I couldn't see his face." "Only." She paused. "He wore a tan mechanic's shirt." Nathan immediately requested employment photographs of Thomas Landry. Every mechanic at his garage wore identical tan work shirts embroidered with the company logo. Again, not proof, but the circle kept tightening. Investigators searched newspaper archives for photographs taken during community events in 1986. Sometimes suspects unknowingly appeared in the background. Hundreds of images revealed nothing. Then one county fair photograph captured Nathan's attention. Sarah Mitchell stood smiling beside a charity book booth. Just 20 feet away, Thomas Landry appeared talking with another visitor. The two weren't together, but they occupied the same space. Someone had written a caption beneath the photograph. "Local librarian helps annual literacy drive." Nathan enlarged the image. Thomas wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking directly at Sarah. The task force quietly requested permission to exhume Thomas Landry's remains. He had died from heart failure in 2018. Without a direct DNA sample, investigators could never conclusively compare the unknown profile. The district attorney approved the order. The Landry family objected emotionally but not legally. The exhumation occurred before sunrise to minimize public attention. Forensic specialists collected bone and tooth samples under strict chain of custody procedures. Then everyone waited. DNA extraction from decades old remains required patience. Sometimes weeks, sometimes months. Nathan hated waiting, but science refused to hurry. Late one evening, Emily walked into the briefing room carrying another folder. No excitement, just quiet determination. "I found something else." She placed 2 microscopic photographs side by side. One showed fibers from Sarah's jacket. The other came from Thomas Landry's preserved mechanic uniform recovered by investigators during the property search. Same polymer composition, same manufacturing process, same dye formulation. Not unique enough to identify a single garment, yet uncommon enough to attract attention. Nathan studied both images. Every new discovery pointed toward Thomas. None crossed the line into certainty. Not yet. He looked once more at the evidence board. Photographs, maps, timelines, laboratory reports. 38 years earlier, detectives had searched Louisiana with little more than eyewitness memories and determination. Now the investigation spoke a different language. Genetics, microscopy, digital reconstruction, forensic genealogy. Each discipline added another fragment to the puzzle. Each fragment brought investigators closer to a truth that had survived nearly 4 decades beneath dust, rain, and forgotten evidence. Then, just before midnight, Nathan's phone rang. The caller ID displayed only one line. Louisiana State Crime Laboratory. He answered immediately. Emily's voice sounded calm, almost too calm. "The comparison is finished." Nathan stood without saying a word. He already knew. Whatever Emily was about to tell him, the investigation would never be the same again. Nathan reached the laboratory in less than 20 minutes. The roads were nearly empty. Rain tapped softly against the windshield, reminding him of another rainy night nearly 4 decades earlier. Nothing in the laboratory had changed. The same bright lights, the same quiet hum of refrigeration units protecting evidence collected decades apart. Emily Carter waited beside the DNA analysis room. She didn't smile. She simply handed Nathan a printed report. He scanned the first page, then stopped. The conclusion occupied only a single sentence. The genetic profile recovered from the remains of Thomas Landry is consistent with the unknown male DNA recovered beneath Sarah Mitchell's fingernails. Nathan read it again, then a third time. There it was. The evidence investigators had chased for months. The unknown DNA belonged to Thomas Landry. Not a cousin, not a distant relative. Thomas himself. After 38 years, science had finally placed him in physical contact with Sarah during the struggle. The room remained silent. No one celebrated. There was no suspect to arrest. Thomas Landry had died 6 years earlier. Justice had arrived too late for a courtroom. But for Sarah's family, truth still mattered. Nathan closed the report carefully. We're not done. Emily nodded. DNA proved contact. It did not explain everything. How had Sarah and Thomas met that night? Why had they left the gas station together? What happened during the missing hour between 6:40 and approximately 7:45 p.m.? Those answers still waited somewhere inside the evidence. The task force reconstructed Thomas's final movements before the murder. His mechanic shop closed shortly after 6. A witness placed his blue Ford pickup at the gas station. Another saw a blue pickup blocking the gravel road leading toward the abandoned boat launch. But investigators needed something stronger. Nathan ordered technicians to re-examine every photograph taken at the original crime scene. Thousands of negatives had recently been digitized. Modern enhancement software revealed details impossible to notice in 1986. One image caught Emily's attention. The abandoned Chevrolet, parked beside Highway 14, reflected faintly in the driver's side window. Another vehicle, almost invisible. Only part of the grille and one headlight could be seen. Emily enlarged the reflection repeatedly. The resolution deteriorated quickly. Still, one detail remained sharp enough to recognize: a chrome hood ornament. Nathan immediately searched vehicle registration records. Thomas Landry's 1984 Ford F-150 had no hood ornament. Richard Gaspard's truck didn't either. Neither did Harold Boudreaux's. The reflected vehicle belonged to someone else. The discovery changed everything. If another vehicle stood beside Sarah's car, another person might have been present. Nathan reopened every interview mentioning additional traffic along Highway 14. Most witnesses remembered nothing unusual. Then he found a forgotten statement taken on October 23, 1986. Witness number 267. School bus driver. Observed dark sedan parked near Highway 14 around 7:15 p.m. The statement had been dismissed because investigators focused on trucks matching earlier descriptions. Now the sedan mattered. Vehicle registration records from Belhaven listed only 37 dark sedans, matching the witness description. Detectives eliminated owners one by one. Business trips, military service, hospital records. Eventually only 2 remained. One belonged to a traveling salesman. The other, Deputy Carl Landry, Thomas's older brother. Nathan slowly leaned back. Carl's patrol vehicle that evening had been a dark sheriff's sedan. According to official reports, he responded to an unrelated disturbance across town until nearly 8:30 p.m. Nathan requested dispatch recordings. Most radio traffic from 1986 had been erased years earlier. One cassette survived inside the parish archive. Technicians restored the deteriorating tape. Carl checked in at 6:42 p.m. Then, nothing. No radio communication for 53 minutes. The longest unexplained silence of his shift. At 7:35 p.m., he reported returning to patrol. Nathan stared at the timeline. 53 missing minutes. Exactly when Sarah disappeared. The task force interviewed retired dispatcher Linda Harris. She listened carefully as Nathan explained the timeline. I remember Carl. Reliable. Very. Did he ever leave his patrol area without reporting? Linda hesitated. Not usually. What about that night? She looked toward an old wall calendar hanging inside her kitchen. I thought it was strange. What? He called in late. Late. He sounded out of breath. Nathan's heartbeat quickened. What exactly did he say? Linda closed her eyes. Back in service. Nothing else. He apologized for radio trouble. Nathan asked quietly, Did you believe him? Linda answered without hesitation. No. Investigators searched Carl Landry's retired patrol files. One document immediately stood out. A maintenance request submitted 3 days after Sarah's murder. Vehicle number 12. Complaint. Front grille damaged. Replace hood ornament. Nathan looked at Emily. Neither spoke. The damaged hood ornament. The reflection in Sarah's window. The unexplained radio silence. One coincidence could be ignored. 3 could not. Nathan visited Sarah Mitchell's younger sister, Rebecca. She had avoided media interviews for decades. This time she welcomed detectives inside. Nathan placed photographs of Thomas and Carl Landry on the table. Rebecca stared quietly, then pointed. Carl. Nathan froze. You recognize him? She nodded slowly. He came to our house. When? The week before Sarah disappeared. Nathan frowned. Why? He brought paperwork after someone vandalized our mailbox. Nathan searched the old case files. No vandalism report existed. Did Sarah know him? Rebecca looked uncertain. I think so. What makes you think that? She called him by his first name. Nathan felt the room grow silent. Sarah trusted Thomas because he repaired her car. She also recognized Carl. The brothers were not strangers. They had both entered her life weeks before the murder. Late that night, Emily reviewed one final laboratory result. Tiny paint particles recovered from Sarah's jacket in 1986 had finally undergone elemental analysis. The composition matched a metallic dark green, enamel manufactured exclusively for Louisiana State Fleet vehicles between 1983 and 1987. Sheriff's patrol sedans, state maintenance trucks, government vehicles. Thomas's pickup wasn't painted that color. Carl's patrol car was. Emily immediately called Nathan. He answered on the first ring. She spoke only one sentence. We've been looking at the wrong Landry. Nathan stood motionless in the darkness of his office. 38 years earlier, investigators believed one killer had crossed Sarah Mitchell's path on a rain-soaked highway. Now the evidence suggested something far more disturbing. Not one brother. 2. And somewhere between Thomas's DNA and Carl's patrol car lay the final truth about what really happened on the night Belhaven lost Sarah Mitchell. The theory no one wanted to consider was suddenly the only theory that explained the evidence. Thomas Landry's DNA was beneath Sarah Mitchell's fingernails. Carl Landry's patrol vehicle appeared to have been at the scene. Carl's radio had gone silent for 53 minutes. Sarah personally recognized both brothers. None of those facts alone proved conspiracy. Together, they demanded answers. Nathan Brooks erased the old timeline from the whiteboard. A new one slowly took shape. 6:20 p.m. Sarah locked the library. 6:35 p.m. She stopped for gasoline. Witnesses saw her speaking calmly with a man beside a blue pickup. Thomas. Shortly after 6:40 p.m. Both vehicles left the gas station, heading south. Then, almost 1 hour disappeared. Investigators returned to the abandoned boat launch for the first time in decades. Nature had reclaimed nearly everything. The gravel road no longer existed. Marsh grass covered the shoreline. Trees stood where investigators once parked patrol cars. Modern LiDAR mapping recreated the landscape as it had existed in 1986. Emily layered historical aerial photographs over the digital terrain. One feature immediately caught her attention. A narrow dirt service road branched away from the launch and disappeared into a dense cypress grove. The original search teams had never documented it. Flooding erased the road only a few years after the murder. Nathan looked at the screen. Search it. Forensic archaeologists began a systematic excavation. Not because they expected another body. Because killers often abandoned objects they believed insignificant. Bottle caps, clothing buttons, tools. The smallest item could rewrite an investigation. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th afternoon, a metal detector emitted a sharp tone beneath several inches of compacted soil. Technicians carefully removed the dirt. A rusted sheriff's department flashlight emerged. Its batteries had long since leaked away. The serial number remained readable. Property records identified it immediately. Issued to Deputy Carl Landry in 1985. Reported missing. Never. There was no record that Carl had ever lost department equipment. Nathan held the flashlight in silence. Police equipment had no reason to be buried beside an abandoned boat launch. Back at the laboratory, Fingerprint specialists examined the flashlight. The metal surface had deteriorated too badly for ridge detail, but tiny fibers remained trapped beneath the cracked rubber grip. Blue cotton, consistent with Sheriff's Department uniform shirts issued during the mid-1980s. Emily looked up from the microscope. Carl held this. Nathan nodded. We just need to prove when. The investigation widened. Retired deputies who had worked alongside Carl Landry received new interviews. Most offended him immediately. He'd never hurt anybody. He was respected. He loved that badge. Nathan expected those responses. Then retired Sergeant William Harper quietly interrupted. Not everyone respected Carl. Nathan looked up. Who didn't? Sheriff Doyle. The original sheriff had died years earlier. Harper continued. They argued constantly. About what? Carl cut corners. Nathan wrote carefully. Examples. He hated paperwork. Sometimes he'd leave patrol without saying where he was going. Nathan's pen stopped moving. How often? Halbhufzeit. More than he admitted. Investigators searched Sheriff Doyle's personal retirement papers donated to the parish museum after his death. Among dozens of handwritten notes sat one sealed envelope labeled simply, Carl. Inside rested 2 pages. Neither mentioned Sarah Mitchell directly, but one paragraph stood out. Carl keeps covering for Tom. Family comes before the badge. Someday it'll destroy him. Nathan stared at the sentence. Carl covering for Thomas. Long before Sarah disappeared, whatever loyalty existed between the brothers had already become a concern inside the department. Emily continued reviewing microscopic evidence collected from Sarah's clothing. Near the jacket collar, she identified a tiny fragment overlooked for 38 years. Transparent plastic, smaller than a grain of rice. Infrared spectroscopy identified the material as polycarbonate, common today, rare in 1986. Nathan frowned. What used polycarbonate back then? Emily searched archive manufacturing databases. Emergency light bars, portable police radios, certain flashlight lenses. The recovered sheriff's flashlight used the same material. Another connection. Small, but impossible to ignore. Then came the phone call no one expected. Rebecca Mitchell wanted to speak again. Nathan drove to her home immediately. She carried an old cardboard box from the attic. I found these. Inside were birthday cards, letters, photographs. Near the bottom lay Sarah's personal appointment calendar. Most entries were ordinary. Library meetings, family birthdays, wedding planning. Then Nathan noticed an appointment on October 18th, written at exactly 6:45 p.m. Only 2 words. Meet Tom. No location. No explanation. Nathan closed the notebook slowly. Sarah hadn't encountered Thomas by chance. She intended to meet him. Voluntarily. The discovery transformed the case. Thomas had arranged the meeting before Sarah ever left work. But why? Nathan searched old bank records again. Telephone logs. Library visitor records. Finally, buried inside archived repair invoices from Thomas's garage, investigators found something previously dismissed. A handwritten note attached to Sarah's service ticket. Customer requested estimate before loan approval. Loan approval. Nathan looked at Emily. What if this wasn't personal? She nodded slowly. What if she owed money? Financial investigators reopened Sarah's records. The answer surprised everyone. She wasn't borrowing money. She was helping someone else apply for one. Thomas Landry. Only weeks before her death, Sarah had agreed to act as a character reference for his business loan at a local credit union. The application had later been denied. Why? Because investigators discovered Thomas had concealed thousands of dollars in unpaid debt. If Sarah learned he had lied, she may have confronted him. The motive investigators searched for during 38 years was beginning to emerge. Not romance, not obsession, money, desperation, and a secret that could destroy everything Thomas had built. Late that evening, Nathan stood alone inside the evidence room. Sarah's appointment calendar rested beside the recovered flashlight. 2 ordinary objects, separated by decades, connected by tragedy. He looked once more at the words written in blue ink. Meet Tom. She believed she was meeting someone she knew, someone she had tried to help, someone she trusted enough to write his name casually inside her calendar. Nathan switched off the evidence room lights. For 38 years, Belhaven believed evil arrived from somewhere beyond the town limits. A stranger, a drifter, a passing predator. The truth felt far colder. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes he's already waiting exactly where you agreed to meet him. The appointment book changed the direction of the investigation overnight. For nearly 4 decades, detectives believed Sarah Mitchell had crossed paths with her killer by chance. Now they knew she had planned to meet Thomas Landry. The question was no longer who she met. The question was why the meeting ended in murder. Nathan Brooks covered an entire wall with enlarged copies of Sarah's calendar, Thomas's repair invoices, bank records, witness statements, and the reconstructed timeline. Every document pointed toward the same conclusion. Sarah trusted Thomas. She had no reason not to. He had serviced her car. She had agreed to help him secure financing for his struggling garage. Their relationship appeared friendly, professional. Nothing suggested fear. Nothing suggested violence. Until October 18, 1986. Financial investigators uncovered another detail hidden inside archived credit union files. Thomas Landry's loan application had not merely been denied. It had been flagged. An internal auditor discovered forged income figures and altered business records attached to the application. The fraud had never reached law enforcement. The bank simply rejected the request. Sarah, listed as a personal reference, was contacted days before the denial. According to handwritten notes preserved in the file, she sounded confused. She reportedly told the loan officer, "Those numbers don't sound right." Nathan read the sentence 3 times. If Sarah realized Thomas had falsified financial documents, she became more than a witness. She became someone who knew his deception had been exposed. The credit union employee who handled the file had long since retired. Her name was Elaine Porter. She was 81. Nathan visited her home, carrying copies of the original paperwork. Elaine adjusted her glasses. "I remember this. You remember Thomas?" She nodded. "He was nervous." "What about Sarah?" Elaine smiled sadly. She looked disappointed. "Did she say why?" Elaine thought carefully. She said, "I wish he had just told the truth." Nathan asked quietly, "Did she seem angry?" "No." "Scared?" "No." She sounded like someone trying to help a friend. That answer lingered in Nathan's mind. Sarah wasn't threatening Thomas. She wasn't trying to ruin him. She simply knew he had lied. Maybe she intended to convince him to admit it. Maybe she agreed to meet him so they could talk privately. A calm conversation. An honest conversation. One that somehow became deadly. Meanwhile, forensic analysts continued examining Thomas Landry's belongings recovered after his death. His widow had voluntarily surrendered several sealed storage boxes from the attic. Old tools, receipts, photographs, hunting equipment. Most appeared completely unrelated. Then technician Emily Carter discovered a small notebook hidden inside the lining of an old toolbox. The notebook contained maintenance records, oil changes, customer payments, parts orders. Near the final pages, several entries had been crossed out heavily with black marker. Advanced infrared imaging revealed faint impressions beneath the ink. One date immediately caught Emily's attention. October 18th, 1986. Beside it, only 3 words remained legible. "Meet Sarah 6:45. Nathan stared at the restored image. Both calendars matched. Sarah wrote, "Meet Tom." Thomas wrote, "Meet Sarah." The meeting had been arranged. Deliberately. Neither expected it to become the last conversation of Sarah's life. Investigators reconstructed the likely route. Library, gas station, Highway 14, Boat Launch Road. The total drive required less than 20 minutes. So where had the missing hour gone? Nathan ordered a complete digital terrain reconstruction using archived satellite imagery, aerial survey photographs, and historical forestry records. The simulation revealed something investigators in 1986 never realized. A logging trail connected the abandoned boat launch to an unused equipment shed nearly half a mile deeper inside the swamp. The structure had collapsed during Hurricane Andrew years later. No one had searched it, because by then, It no longer existed. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the former location. The building itself was gone. Only fragments of the concrete foundation remained. Archaeologists carefully sifted through the surrounding soil. Most recovered items belonged to logging crews from the early 1980s. Rusted nails, fuel cans, broken chains. Then a volunteer uncovered something unexpected. A silver earring. Bent, partially buried beneath tree roots. Rebecca Mitchell identified it immediately. It belonged to Sarah. Family photographs confirmed it. Sarah wore matching silver earrings almost every day. Only one had ever been recovered with her body. The second had remained hidden in the swamp for nearly 4 decades. Nathan looked across the excavation site. Sarah had been here. Not just near Highway 14. Not merely beside the canal. She had reached the old logging shed alive. The confrontation likely happened there. The body had been moved afterward. That explained why the original crime scene revealed so little. Investigators had been searching the wrong location all along. The discovery triggered another search. Metal detectors swept the surrounding area. Hours passed. Nothing. Then a sharp signal emerged beneath thick layers of mud. Technicians uncovered an old pocket knife. Its wooden handle had nearly rotted away. The blade remained folded. Forensic restoration began immediately. No fingerprints survived, but microscopic blood traces remained inside the hinge. DNA extraction required several days. Everyone waited. While the laboratory worked, Nathan interviewed another retired deputy. Frank Collins had joined the sheriff's office only months after Sarah's murder. He remembered rumors circulating among older deputies. What kind of rumors? Frank hesitated. That Carl was protecting someone. Nathan remained silent. Nobody said Thomas directly, but everyone assumed it. Why? Because Carl destroyed his own career. Nathan frowned. Carl retired with honors. Frank shook his head. You only saw the public record. What really happened? He stopped chasing promotions. He turned down detective. He transferred to night patrol. Nathan looked confused. Why would that matter? Frank answered quietly. Because guilty people don't always confess. Sometimes. That they punish themselves. Late that evening, Emily entered Nathan's office carrying the laboratory report from the recovered pocket knife. Her expression revealed everything before she spoke. The blood isn't Thomas's. Nathan slowly stood. Sarah! Emily shook her head. No. He felt the room grow colder. Then whose is it? Emily placed the report on the desk. Male. Unknown. Nathan stared at the page. Another unidentified DNA profile. Another man. Another presence at the logging shed. For nearly 40 years, investigators believed they were searching for one killer. Now the evidence suggested something even darker. Sarah hadn't been alone with Thomas Landry. Someone else had been waiting in the swamp that night. And whoever that second man was, he had disappeared without leaving a single name behind. The laboratory confirmed the result twice. The blood recovered from the pocket knife did not belong to Sarah Mitchell. It did not belong to Thomas Landry. It belonged to an unidentified male. For several minutes, no one inside the task force meeting room spoke. Nathan Brooks walked slowly toward the evidence board. Until now, every major discovery had pointed toward Thomas. Now the investigation had fractured again. A second unknown man. A second DNA profile. A second mystery. Nathan uncapped a black marker and drew another circle beside Thomas's photograph. Inside it he wrote only 2 words. Unknown male. Emily Carter reviewed the laboratory process from the beginning. Extraction. Amplification. Sequencing. Comparison. Everything was correct. The blood sample had been preserved inside the folded hinge of the knife, protected from moisture for nearly 4 decades. Enough DNA survived for a reliable profile. Nathan asked the question everyone was thinking. Could it belong to Carl? Emily shook her head. I already compared it. No match. The room became silent again. Thomas. Carl. Unknown male. 3 separate genetic profiles now surrounded Sarah's final hours. The knife itself revealed another surprise. Microscopic, where patterns suggested it had not been used as a weapon. The blood had entered the hinge because someone holding it suffered a cut, perhaps while folding the blade, perhaps during a struggle. Whoever bled onto the knife had walked away alive. Nathan stared at the report. If he was injured, that someone might have remembered. Investigators returned to every emergency room record within 50 miles of Belhaven. October 18th through October 25th, 1986. Hundreds of handwritten patient logs. Most were routine. Broken wrists, farm injuries, fever. Then one record caught Detective Lisa Moreno's attention. October 19th. Male. Age approximately 30. Deep laceration to the left palm. Patient refused stitches. Provided only the first name. Ray. No surname. Cash payment. Left within 20 minutes. Nathan requested every surviving document from the small clinic. One nurse still remembered. Margaret Delacroix, 86 years old, living in a retirement home outside Lafayette. Margaret studied the faded treatment log for several minutes. I remember him. Nathan leaned forward. What do you remember? He wouldn't look at me. Anything else? He kept asking if cuts like that left scars. Nathan exchanged a glance with Lisa. Did anyone come with him? Margaret closed her eyes. I think that there was another man waiting outside. What did he look like? I only saw a uniform. Nathan froze. What kind of uniform? I thought that a deputy sheriff. Back at headquarters, investigators compared duty rosters. Only one deputy worked within driving distance of that clinic during the early hours of October 19th. Carl Landry. Again, always Carl. Always close enough to matter. Never close enough to prove murder. Nathan ordered another search through archived dispatch records. This time they focused on patrol vehicle mileage. Every sheriff's cruiser underwent weekly maintenance. Mechanics recorded odometer readings. Carl's patrol sedan traveled nearly 70 additional miles that weekend compared with surrounding shifts. No explanation existed. No reports justified the distance. Someone had driven far beyond assigned patrol routes. Nathan marked the figure on the timeline. 70 unexplained miles. Enough to reach the clinic. Enough to return before sunrise. Meanwhile, forensic genealogy produced its own breakthrough. The unidentified male DNA profile from the knife generated a distant familial connection. Not close. Fourth cousin. Enough to begin another family tree. Unlike Thomas's profile, this lineage centered around western Louisiana. One surname appeared repeatedly. Rousseau. Nathan searched the original witness interviews. Nothing. Property records. Nothing. Then retired employment files from Thomas Landry's garage revealed a former part-time mechanic. Raymond Rousseau. Known to friends simply as Ray. Nathan looked back at the emergency room record. Patient identified himself only as Ray. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. Raymond Rousseau had died in a refinery explosion in 1998. No children. No surviving parents. Only one younger sister remained alive. She voluntarily provided a DNA sample after investigators explained the reopening of Sarah's case. Everyone waited. 3 anxious days. The comparison finished just before noon. Emily entered the conference room carrying the report. Nathan recognized her expression immediately. It's him. She nodded once. The blood belongs to Raymond Rousseau. Silence spread across the room. Raymond had worked for Thomas. He knew Carl. He bled at the logging shed. He sought medical treatment the following morning. And then, he vanished from the investigation completely. Nathan reopened Raymond's employment records. His final paycheck from Thomas's garage had been issued only 5 days after Sarah's murder. Then he quit without notice. Neighbors later reported he moved temporarily to Baton Rouge before finding refinery work. No interviews. No statements. No one had questioned him in 1986. Not once. How had investigators missed someone so closely connected? The answer appeared buried inside the original evidence log. Raymond's name never appeared because Thomas told detectives he had fired him weeks earlier. Payroll records proved that statement was false. Someone had lied, and no one caught it. Late that afternoon, Nathan visited Raymond's younger sister, Denise. She welcomed detectives cautiously. I've waited years for somebody to ask about my brother. Nathan looked surprised. Why? Because he changed after 1986. How? He stopped sleeping. He drank. He locked every door. She looked toward an old family photograph resting on the fireplace. He used to laugh all the time. What happened? Denise answered in barely more than a whisper. He told me that he saw something no one would ever believe. Nathan remained perfectly still. What exactly did he say? He wouldn't tell me. He only kept repeating. It wasn't supposed to happen. Nathan drove back to headquarters under a sky heavy with rain clouds. The sentence echoed in his mind. It wasn't supposed to happen. Those 5 words changed everything. They suggested planning, expectation, a meeting intended for one purpose that spiraled into another. Sarah hadn't been randomly attacked. Something had gone catastrophically wrong. Thomas was there. Raymond was there. Carl arrived afterward, or perhaps had been there all along. Nathan looked once more at the evidence board. 3 men, 3 intersecting lives, 1 murdered librarian. The truth no longer resembled the simple homicide described in 1986. It resembled a desperate chain of decisions made in panic. 1 lie, 1 mistake, 1 death, and then decades spent protecting a secret that had grown too large for any one man to carry alone. Just before midnight, Emily called again. Her voice was calm, but Nathan immediately recognized the urgency. We found something inside Raymond Rousseau's old personnel file. What is it? A cassette tape. Nathan gripped the phone tighter. A recording. Emily answered quietly. No. A handwritten label. It read only 4 words. October 18th. Do not erase. Nathan felt the same chill detectives had experienced decades earlier whenever forgotten evidence resurfaced from dusty archives. Somewhere inside that aging cassette, someone may have captured the voices of the last people who saw Sarah Mitchell alive. The cassette looked ordinary. A 60-minute Maxell tape. Clear plastic. 1 cracked corner. Dust coated the edges where it had sat untouched for decades inside a cardboard personnel file. Across the front, written in fading black marker, were 4 words. October 18th. Do not erase. Nobody knew what was recorded on it. Nobody knew who had made it. Chain of custody specialists photographed every angle before it entered the forensic audio laboratory. The tape itself was fragile. 1 careless attempt could destroy the only copy forever. Audio engineer Daniel Foster examined the cassette beneath magnification. The pressure pad had partially detached. The magnetic ribbon showed signs of stretching. It won't survive a normal tape player, he said quietly. We rebuild it first. For the next 2 days, technicians worked millimeter by millimeter. The ribbon was cleaned. Broken sections were repaired. Every inch was digitized at extremely slow speed. Nobody listened until the transfer finished. No one wanted the original damaged further. Finally, late Friday evening, Daniel pressed play. Static. A loud mechanical hum. Then, an engine. Someone was driving. The recording continued for nearly 3 minutes before voices appeared. Male. Young. Laughing. Nathan leaned closer to the speakers. Can you clean that up? Daniel nodded. Hours passed. Software removed background noise layer by layer. The voices became clearer. One belonged to Raymond Rousseau. His sister identified it immediately after hearing only a few seconds. The second male voice remained unidentified. Then another sound emerged. A car door closing. Footsteps on gravel. And finally, a woman's voice. Calm. Confident. Tom. Nobody inside the laboratory moved. Emily slowly looked toward Nathan. Sarah Mitchell had just spoken. The recording continued. I only have a few minutes. A man's voice answered. We won't be long. Not Raymond. Not yet. Nathan recognized the tone from archived interviews. Thomas Landry. The tape had captured the beginning of their meeting. The quality fluctuated constantly. Wind distorted several sentences. Passing vehicles drowned out others. Still, fragments remained understandable. Sarah sounded concerned. Not frightened. I told the bank that I couldn't lie. Thomas answered quickly. I know. I just need you to explain. There was a pause. Then Raymond's voice entered. You said nobody else would be here. Sarah sounded confused. Who is he? Thomas replied immediately. He's helping. Helping with what? The tape never explained. A loud metallic sound interrupted the conversation. Perhaps someone closed a truck door. Perhaps equipment shifted. Then silence. 38 seconds passed without words. Finally, another engine approached. Nathan felt his pulse quicken. A vehicle stopped nearby. A new voice. Older. Authoritative. "You two finished." The laboratory became perfectly still. Emily whispered, "Carl." The voice matched archived radio recordings from Deputy Carl Landry almost perfectly. The next several seconds were chaotic. Wind. Footsteps. Someone arguing. Sarah's voice rose sharply. "No." Another sentence disappeared beneath interference. Then, a scream. The audio clipped violently. Something struck the recorder. The tape continued running. Heavy breathing. People shouting over one another. None of the words remained clear. After approximately 2 minutes, everything stopped. Only insects and distant thunder remained. The recording ended 12 minutes later. No explanation. No confession. Just silence. Nathan replayed the audio 6 times. Each pass revealed another fragment. A name. A single word. The sound of running footsteps. Nothing complete. Yet one detail stood above everything else. Sarah never sounded afraid until Carl arrived. That changed the entire timeline. Thomas may have arranged the meeting. Raymond may have witnessed it. But Carl's arrival transformed the conversation into violence. Forensic audio specialists isolated the final intelligible sentence spoken before the struggle. The enhancement required nearly 16 hours. Daniel finally removed his headphones. "I've got it." The room gathered around his workstation. He pressed play. Sarah's voice, clearer than before. "You can't cover this up forever." Nathan closed his eyes. "Cover what? Fraud? Corruption? Something much larger?" Nobody knew. But Sarah clearly believed she had discovered something serious. Investigators immediately reopened every corruption complaint filed against the Belhaven Sheriff's Office during the 1980s. Most involved minor misconduct, missing evidence, improper traffic stops, administrative disputes. One internal investigation stood apart: evidence theft. The complaint accused several deputies of stealing confiscated property from narcotics cases. The inquiry ended abruptly. Insufficient evidence. Nathan reviewed the names connected to the investigation. Deputy Carl Landry. Interviewed. Never charged. Sheriff Doyle. Lead investigator. Thomas Landry. Mentioned only once. As owner of a repair garage servicing department vehicles. Nathan slowly placed the file beside the cassette transcript. If Thomas repaired sheriff's vehicles. If Carl worked inside the department. If Sarah accidentally learned something connected to financial fraud or stolen property. The meeting suddenly made sense. She wasn't meeting Thomas to argue about a loan. She was confronting him with something far more dangerous. Emily examined another overlooked item from the original evidence box. Sarah's address book. One page contained a folded receipt. Behind it, a handwritten note. Only half survived because water had damaged the paper. Tom said Carl doesn't know. The remaining sentence had dissolved decades earlier. Nathan stared at the incomplete message. Whatever Sarah intended to write, she never finished. That evening, investigators visited the former sheriff's office evidence vault. Modern renovations had converted it into storage. Most original shelving remained. A retired clerk remembered something unusual. There used to be another evidence room. Nathan looked surprised. "Where?" She pointed toward a bricked-over doorway behind old filing cabinets. Construction crews reopened the sealed entrance the next morning. Inside lay a forgotten storage room untouched since the early 1990s. Most shelves stood empty. One metal cabinet remained locked. After obtaining authorization, investigators forced it open. Dust exploded into the air. Inside rested dozens of forgotten evidence envelopes. Some belonged to solved burglaries. Others contained abandoned property. At the very bottom, Nathan discovered a sealed brown envelope bearing a familiar name. Sarah Mitchell. Across the front, stamped in red ink, were 2 words. Withheld evidence. No explanation. No accompanying report. No chain of custody signature after November 1986. Someone had deliberately removed part of Sarah's evidence from the official investigation. Nathan carefully broke the aging seal. Inside lay several photographs, a folded map, and one undeveloped roll of 35mm film. He looked slowly toward Emily. If that film still contained images from the night Sarah died, the investigation wasn't just about to change. It was about to expose who had hidden the truth from the very beginning. Nathan carried the sealed evidence envelope himself. No one else touched it. 38 years earlier, someone had marked it withheld evidence and hidden it behind a locked cabinet inside the sheriff's office. No report explained why. No signature justified the decision. Only silence. The undeveloped roll of 35mm film immediately became the highest priority item in the investigation. Modern forensic photography laboratories had successfully recovered images from film damaged by fire, floods, and decades of neglect. If anything remained on that roll, it could answer questions that every witness had failed to explain. The laboratory worked in complete darkness. The film was carefully removed from its cartridge. Age had made the emulsion brittle. One mistake would destroy every frame forever. Chemical processing took nearly 6 hours. When the negatives finally emerged, everyone leaned forward. Several frames were blank. Others had been ruined by moisture. Then, image number 4 slowly appeared. A gravel road, tall cypress trees. Nathan immediately recognized the abandoned logging trail reconstructed through LiDAR mapping. Another frame emerged. The old equipment shed, still standing in 1986. Image 6, a blue Ford pickup, parked beside the building. Thomas Landry's truck. Image 7, 3 people standing near the entrance. The resolution was poor. Faces remained indistinct. One figure wore a mechanic's shirt. Another appeared to be a woman. The third, a sheriff's uniform. Nobody spoke. Emily enlarged the photograph digitally. The image became grainy. Still, a shoulder patch remained visible. Belhaven Sheriff's Office. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. Carl Landry had been at the logging shed. Not speculation. Not witness memory. Photographic evidence. Someone had known that since 1986, someone had hidden the film. The remaining photographs told an incomplete story. One captured Sarah standing beside her Chevrolet. She appeared calm, not restrained, not frightened. Another showed Thomas speaking with her. His hands moved as if explaining something. The final usable frame froze a single moment. Carl stepping out of his patrol sedan. Sarah turning toward him. The photograph ended there. Everything afterward remained unknown. Nathan immediately searched the evidence envelope again. The folded map contained handwritten markings. Several roads circled in blue ink. One location highlighted repeatedly, the abandoned logging shed. Written beneath it were 3 initials, R.R., Raymond Rousseau. The map belonged to him, which meant Raymond had either taken the photographs or knew who did. Forensic analysts dusted the negatives and film container for latent fingerprints. Nothing survived. Too much time, too much handling. But microscopic fibers clung to the cardboard envelope. Blue cotton, matching sheriff's department uniforms issued during the 1980s. Nathan looked toward Emily. Carl filed this. Emily nodded slowly. Or someone wearing the same uniform. Either possibility carried the same implication. Evidence had been hidden from investigators. The task force reconstructed the photographs chronologically. Sarah arrived first. Thomas met her. Raymond remained nearby. Carl arrived later. Exactly as the cassette recording suggested. The timeline finally aligned. But one question refused to disappear. Who took the pictures? None of the 4 people visible could have operated the camera. There had been a 5th person, someone standing just outside every frame. Nathan reviewed every name connected to Thomas's garage. Customers, suppliers, former employees, delivery drivers, photographers. Nothing. Then Lisa Moreno discovered a receipt attached to Raymond Rousseau's personnel records. Camera rental. October 17th, 1986. 1 day before the murder. Nathan stared at the faded receipt. Why would a mechanic rent a camera? Denise Rousseau provided the answer. She remembered her brother experimenting with photography during the mid-1980s. He carried that camera everywhere. Did he mention taking pictures that weekend? She thought for a moment. He said, that he needed proof. Nathan leaned forward. Proof of what? He never told me. But he looked scared. The word echoed through Nathan's thoughts. Proof. Raymond wasn't documenting memories. He expected something to happen. Something worth recording. Perhaps Thomas invited him deliberately. Perhaps Raymond already suspected trouble. Whatever the reason, he arrived carrying a camera, not a weapon, not expecting murder, expecting evidence. Audio engineers returned to the restored cassette, knowing Carl appeared in the photographs allowed them to isolate voices more accurately. A previously unintelligible sentence suddenly became clear. Thomas, his voice shaking. Carl, this wasn't the plan. The laboratory fell silent. Nathan replayed the sentence. Again and again. Thomas sounded frightened, desperate. The recording suggested exactly what Denise Russo had implied. Something had gone terribly wrong. Something no one intended. Investigators examined Carl Landry's personal finances once more. This time they searched beyond bank accounts, property deeds, insurance claims, tax records. One transaction stood out. 3 months after Sarah's murder, Carl purchased 30 acres of swamp land surrounding the abandoned logging shed. Cash. No mortgage. No explanation. Nathan frowned. The land had almost no market value. Flood-prone. Impossible to farm. Why buy it? Unless he wanted to control access forever. Ground crews returned to the property. Using updated maps, they searched areas never examined during the original investigation. Metal detectors swept slowly through dense vegetation. Hours passed. Late in the afternoon, one detector emitted a faint signal beneath several feet of mud. Excavation uncovered a rusted metal toolbox. Locked. Its hinges had fused shut decades earlier. Forensic technicians opened it inside the laboratory. Most contents had deteriorated. Old wrenches, a flashlight battery, several receipts. Then Emily lifted a water-damaged spiral notebook sealed inside a plastic bag. The plastic preserved most of the pages. Across the front, written in blue ink, appeared one name. Raymond Russo. Nathan carefully opened the notebook. The first several pages contained routine work notes, engine repairs, customer names, parts lists. Near the middle, the writing changed. Short entries, dates, observations, almost like a diary. Then he reached the final completed page. Dated October 18th, 1986. The last sentence stopped everyone in the room. If anything happens tonight, it wasn't Sarah's fault. Nathan slowly closed the notebook. Raymond knew something terrible might happen before he ever drove to the logging shed. He had rented a camera, recorded audio, written warnings, hidden evidence. Yet he still went. Whatever Thomas had told him, whatever Carl planned, Raymond believed he could witness it without becoming part of it. Instead, he walked into a night that would haunt him until the day he died. And somewhere beyond the final page of that notebook, the complete truth was still waiting. Raymond Russo's notebook became the center of the investigation. Unlike witness statements collected years after the fact, these words had been written before memories could fade, before rumors spread, before anyone knew Sarah Mitchell would never return home. Forensic document examiners authenticated the handwriting. The ink matched pens manufactured during the mid-1980s. The paper had aged naturally. Nothing suggested fabrication. Nathan Brooks turned each page carefully. Most entries documented ordinary repairs at Thomas Landry's garage, oil changes, transmission work, customer complaints. Then, during the first week of October 1986, the tone shifted. The notes became shorter, more anxious. One entry read, "Tom keeps saying Carl will fix everything." Another, "Don't like where this is heading." Then another, "Wish I never agreed." No details, no names beyond Thomas and Carl. But the pattern was unmistakable. Raymond was frightened long before October 18th. Several pages later, investigators found an unfinished paragraph. The writing became shaky, almost rushed. "Sarah doesn't deserve this. She thinks they're just talking. She still believes Tom." Nathan stared silently. Sarah had no idea she was walking into danger. She expected a conversation. Nothing more. Emily continued restoring damaged pages using multispectral imaging. Words hidden beneath water stains slowly appeared. The final readable sentence changed everything. Carl says no witnesses. Nobody spoke. The laboratory suddenly felt much colder. Nathan looked toward Emily. If that's accurate. She finished the sentence quietly. But then Sarah wasn't the original target. The theory stunned the task force. For nearly 40 years, investigators believed Sarah herself had been the reason for the meeting. Now another possibility emerged. What if Thomas only wanted to convince Sarah to remain silent? What if Carl believed she couldn't be trusted? What if the confrontation escalated after Carl arrived? That explanation fit the cassette. It fit Raymond's fear. It fit Thomas's desperate statement. This wasn't the plan. Nathan ordered another review of the recovered photographs. This time analysts focused on tiny background details rather than the people. One enlarged frame revealed something almost invisible beside the logging shed. A metal fuel drum. Across the side, a faded company logo. Bayou Industrial Supply. Nathan immediately searched purchase records. Only one customer ordered that specific fuel drum in Belhaven during 1986. Thomas Landry's garage. Meanwhile, investigators reconstructed the final minutes using every available source. 6:45 p.m. Sarah arrived. Thomas spoke privately with her. Raymond documented the meeting. Approximately 7:05. Carl arrived. An argument began. Sarah accused someone of hiding the truth. Thomas attempted to calm the situation. Raymond continued recording. Moments later, violence erupted. Sarah fought back. Thomas's DNA transferred beneath her fingernails. Raymond cut his hand while trying to intervene, or while handling the pocket knife. Carl's patrol vehicle became involved. Afterward, Sarah's body was moved. Evidence was hidden. The film disappeared. The notebook vanished. The flashlight was buried. The sheriff's office unknowingly investigated a crime while one of its own officers quietly controlled pieces of the evidence. There was still one problem. No confession. Every principal figure except Raymond was dead. Thomas, Carl, Sheriff Doyle. None remained alive to explain what happened. Nathan needed something stronger than circumstantial reconstruction. He needed a final piece, something impossible to challenge. The answer came from an unexpected place. A retired evidence clerk named Helen Morris contacted investigators after seeing renewed media coverage. She asked only one question. "Are you still looking for Carl's locker?" Nathan froze. "What locker?" Helen frowned. "The old personal lockers. The sheriff made everyone clean them out before renovations." "What happened to Carl's?" "I don't know. But nobody ever emptied it. The old station building had been converted into municipal offices years earlier. Most original fixtures disappeared during renovation. The basement remained largely untouched. Maintenance workers eventually located a row of rusted employee lockers hidden behind drywall. Most stood open. One remained locked. Nameplate faded. Only 3 letters could still be read. .RL. The lock had rusted solid. Technicians carefully cut it away. Inside hung an old sheriff's jacket, a raincoat, a pair of boots. Nothing unusual, until Emily examined the jacket under forensic lighting. Tiny dark stains appeared along the inside cuff, invisible to the naked eye. Presumptive testing confirmed the presence of blood. Very old blood. DNA extraction began immediately. Everyone waited. Nathan spent the evening reviewing Sarah's family photographs. He stopped at one picture taken during the summer of 1986. Sarah stood smiling outside the library. No fear. No suspicion. No hint that only months later her name would become synonymous with Belhaven's greatest tragedy. He wondered how many lives might have changed if Thomas had simply admitted his financial fraud. If Carl had never driven to the logging shed. If Raymond had walked away. History often turned on decisions lasting only seconds. Shortly after dawn, Emily entered the briefing room carrying a sealed report. No words. She simply placed it in front of Nathan. He opened it slowly. The blood recovered from Carl Landry's jacket matched. Sarah Mitchell. Nathan closed his eyes. At last, physical evidence connected Carl directly to the struggle. Not transferred through a patrol car. Not inferred from photographs. Her blood had been inside his personal jacket for 38 years. The final wall protecting his innocence collapsed. But one mystery still refused to disappear. Why had Raymond Russo hidden the notebook instead of giving it to police? Emily answered before Nathan asked. She held up one final item recovered from the notebook's plastic wrapping. A folded piece of paper, barely larger than a business card. On the outside, Raymond had written only one sentence. "Open this after I'm gone." Nathan unfolded it carefully. The first line read, "If you're reading this, I finally found the courage to tell the truth." Nathan unfolded the letter with both hands. The paper had become brittle with age. Its edges cracked softly as he flattened it across the conference table. Forensic document examiners quickly confirmed the handwriting matched every verified sample from Raymond Russo's notebook. No alterations, no forgery, no signs that anyone else had written a single word. The room fell silent. 38 years of unanswered questions had led to one final witness. A man who had never spoken publicly. A man who carried the truth until the day he died. Nathan began reading aloud. "If this letter is open, I'm gone. I've wanted to tell the police the truth more times than I can count. Every time I tried, I saw Sarah's face, and then I saw Carl's badge. I convinced myself nobody would believe me. Maybe I was a coward. Maybe I deserved to carry it." Nathan paused for only a second before continuing. "Tom asked me to bring my camera because he wanted proof Sarah agreed to keep quiet. He kept saying everything would be fine if she listened. He never said anyone was going to get hurt." Emily slowly looked toward the restored photographs spread across the table. The camera, the film, the notebook, every piece fit together. Nathan continued. Sarah arrived calm. She wasn't angry. She kept telling Tom he should tell the truth before things became worse. She said lying always catches up with people. Tom looked scared. He kept saying Carl would fix everything. That sentence matched the notebook entries written days before. Thomas had relied on his older brother from the beginning. Not because Carl planned violence. Because Thomas believed Carl could make problems disappear. The next paragraph became more difficult to read. Water damage had erased parts of several lines. Forensic imaging reconstructed enough to understand the meaning. Carl showed up angry. He kept asking Sarah who else knew. She said nobody. She only wanted Tom to admit what he did. Nathan stopped again. Sarah hadn't threatened anyone. She hadn't demanded money. She hadn't contacted reporters. She simply believed honesty would solve the problem. The final pages described the confrontation. Carl grabbed Sarah's arm. She pulled away. Tom tried to separate them. Everybody started shouting. Sarah scratched Tom. Nathan immediately thought about the DNA beneath Sarah's fingernails. That moment explained it. Thomas hadn't attacked first. He had tried to restrain her. Then Raymond described the instant that changed every life forever. Sarah pushed Carl. Carl slipped. His flashlight hit her across the side of the head. The conference room became completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Raymond continued. She fell. Nobody expected that. She stopped moving. Emily slowly closed her eyes. The recovered sheriff's flashlight, buried near the logging trail. The polycarbonate fragment. Everything suddenly aligned. Nathan turned another page. Tom started crying. He kept saying this wasn't supposed to happen. The exact sentence investigators recovered from the cassette. Raymond hadn't invented it. The recording confirmed it. Carl checked Sarah. He said she wasn't breathing. Then everything changed. Nathan continued reading. Carl said if anybody found out, all of us were finished. He ordered us to move her. Tom refused. Carl threatened to blame everything on Tom. I helped because I was afraid. Raymond admitted helping move Sarah's body, helping abandon her car, helping bury the evidence. Not because he planned murder, because panic became conspiracy. The confession answered nearly every remaining question. Why Raymond hid the photographs. Why he buried the notebook. Why he never spoke. Fear. For decades, he believed nobody would believe the word of a mechanic against a deputy sheriff. Even after Carl retired, the guilt remained stronger than the courage. Nathan reached the final paragraph. Tom died believing Sarah's blood was on his hands. Carl died pretending nothing happened. I died every day in between. Sarah deserved the truth. Her family deserved the truth. If anyone ever finds this, tell them I was sorry. Nathan lowered the letter. No one inside the room spoke for several minutes. 38 years of mystery had ended not with a dramatic confession inside an interrogation room, but with the quiet words of a frightened witness who waited until after his own death to tell the truth. The district attorney reviewed every piece of evidence over the following week. The DNA, the restored cassette, the photographs, Raymond's authenticated confession, the recovered flashlight, Carl's jacket carrying Sarah's blood, Thomas's DNA beneath Sarah's fingernails. The conclusion became unavoidable. Sarah Mitchell's death had not been a carefully planned execution. It had begun as a meeting, an argument, a desperate attempt to hide financial fraud. Then one violent moment changed everything. What followed was not an accident. It was a deliberate cover-up lasting nearly 4 decades. Belhaven gathered at the courthouse on a gray October morning. Many expected another press conference filled with unanswered questions. Instead, Nathan stepped to the podium carrying only a thin folder. Behind him stood members of the cold case task force. No celebration, no applause, only silence. Nathan looked toward Sarah's surviving family before speaking. For 38 years, this town believed Sarah Mitchell disappeared because a stranger crossed her path. He paused. That wasn't the truth. He carefully explained the findings, the forensic evidence, the hidden photographs, the DNA, the confession. No dramatic language, only facts. Some people cried quietly. Others simply stared at the ground. The truth heard differently than uncertainty. It gave names to the nightmare, but it could never return what had been lost. As reporters packed away their cameras, Nathan remained standing outside the courthouse alone. Rain began falling lightly across Belhaven, almost the same way it had on October 18, 1986. For a long moment, he watched the drops strike the courthouse steps. Rain had erased footprints that night. It had hidden tire tracks. It had delayed justice for decades. But it hadn't erased everything. Some evidence had survived beneath fingernails, some inside forgotten film, some inside a frightened man's conscience. And in the end, that had been enough to bring Sarah Mitchell's voice back into the light after 38 years of silence.